Welcome to this special edition of The Public Square. I'm Rob Walgate, joined in studio today by Alan C. Duncan and Anna Welch. Welcome, guys. A little different team around the table today.
Excited to be here.
In today's edition of The Public Square, we're actually going to, would we say borrow? No, we're not borrowing because we're not giving it back. We're going to use a broadcast from one of our partner programs, First Person with Wayne Shepherd. Wayne had both of you on his show last month.
That's actually one of the biggest honors I've had since writing this book is getting on First Person with Wayne Shepherd. Like I've seen a lot of people get on that show. I'm like, man, like that would be a cool show to be on. So
we were thrilled.
We finally made it.
We were so thrilled when he asked us.
Well, let's talk about why you were on First Person with Wayne Shepherd. It's because late last year in 2024, you guys released a children's book. You were the author of a book, The Front Steps. So Wayne had you on to interview you, and you both did such a great job that we're like, Wayne, hey, can we use that interview and allow our audience at the Public Square to hear it as well?
Yeah, he really had us on to talk about somebody else. You know, he didn't have us on to talk about ourselves. We were there to talk about Dr. W.B. Allen, who listeners to this program know very well.
Yeah, you wrote a book that highlights a chapter in Dr. Allen's life, and our listeners will get to hear that in a bit as we dive into the program you did with Wayne. But I have to ask you both, did you have this on your bingo card of life that you would author a children's book? Did you think that was going to be possible?
I actually have always wanted to author a children's book about a few other ideas. So maybe this will be some sort of launching point. But no, this wasn't exactly on my to-do list for 2024 and 2025.
No, so, you have a lot on your to-do list.
It's getting longer by the day.
Yeah.
Somehow you get one thing off the to-do list and then you get like three more on. So it's like a never-ending to-do list.
Yeah, I would say yes as well. Yeah, I always wanted to write a children's book. I have other ideas like Anna does. I have the text of multiple children's books written that they needs images and pictures still. But yeah, I always wanted to. So this is a very cool.
Alan, you're an author as well before this children's book. So this is the first thing for me, but you've had other things as well.
Yeah, it's something I've always enjoyed doing. It was the one thing I was good at in school. Was every teacher kind of tolerated me until they found out in fifth grade I could write passably well, and then they liked me. So it was the one thing that I could do.
Did it have anything to do with you like throwing stuff in class or talking when you weren't supposed to?
It was daydreaming.
Was it all the questions?
Yeah, it was looking out the window.
Scrolling.
Yeah.
Pre-scrolling. You were scrolling in your mind. Mm-hmm. Scrolling in your mind.
Yeah.
But it's also a time when both of you are parents. Alan, your children are a bit older than Anna's, but it's in that time where you guys in the past 5 to 10 years have been reading a lot of children's books because you both read a lot to your kids. So you kind of have that idea on what can keep kids' attention. How can we shape this story? And this was a real life story, so that made it a bit easier, but it allowed you then to dive in.
That was what was really neat for me as a mom, because every night me and my husband read stories to all our girls, and they're at a different age range of stories. But that was so cool because we've been reading now children's books for at least 10 years. So 10 years of reading children's books, and to actually try to write one yourself and envision one, that was what was really personally neat in this experience.
Well, it's funny you say that about our kids. Anna's kids and my kids are in the office today. We're hoping they don't barge through the door.
Yeah, you may hear them.
You may hear them.
And I will say, Alan, if we hear kids, most likely it's going to be your kids.
Mine, yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't put it past my 2-year-old right now, guys.
Yeah, if you hear something
wild.
fall or crash in the background, that might be my guys. They brought every baseball I think we have in my house and multiple footballs. I don't know what sport they're playing.
But that's one thing, let's talk about the work we do at the American Policy Roundtable, because this book was released under the umbrella of the American Policy Roundtable, and we talk about the next generation. We talk about restoring the reading of books. And, this place, I say this place because we're sitting in the studio at the American Mission Center, but it's no secret that when we talked about building this place with Dave and the team, that embracing young people And Dave loves when our kids are in this building. That's what he wants to see as the CEO of the organization. He loves coming here and knowing that our kids are walking around, that our kids are helping us do stuff, that our kids are involved, that our kids' opinions are asked on. When we turned over the front dirt for this property, as I point out the window 5 summers ago, it was our kids, the kids and the grandkids of the staff at the American Mission Center and the American Policy Roundtable that turned the dirt over. That's one of my favorite pictures when it pops up every summer.
That is such a neat picture. People have been congratulating me, and I'm having a hard time receiving that because I look at this project as such a group effort, not only with the writing, but somebody said that to me the other day, and I said, look, I have an amazing place to work. You know, if not for the American Policy Roundtable and Kids on the Square who saw this project and supported it and said, yes, let's do this. Sure, I played a role in it. And this is truly about Dr. Allen's life. You know, it's his story. But yeah, I'm having a hard time just acknowledging any sort of role I did play because it's everyone. Everyone had a hand in this. Even the donors who give to the work of the roundtable, their hands are in this as well. And this is part of the outreach of what we do is trying to speak to the next generation. And there's a lot of people who played a part in that.
Yeah, I would just echo that. And that's why when you look at the cover of the book, it says written by his friends. You know, because everybody in staff put some kind of idea in. I know Sherry Eisen on our staff wrote a draft of this as
Dave.
well. Yeah, Dave wrote a draft. You and I did. Rob, I think you even had some
I drew
ideas.
some pictures, I think. I doodled a little bit on that thing.
A couple stick man.
Yeah. Patty on our staff gave some ideas as well. So it was definitely a team effort.
But that's one of the things as well I will say about our team that sits around the table. And, you know, it says on the front, written by his friends. You two definitely did the legwork in the writing and the putting it together. And you'll get to hear in a moment, Alan talk about when he heard the story firsthand from Dr. Allen at his house. But it also, I'm blessed to work here because, you know, you guys are humbly saying that. But as we sit around the table as a team, it's really cool to work with people that don't care who gets the credit for what is done, whether it's writing a book or getting a piece of legislation passed or working with people to get something out. It's just wanting the truth to be told in the right way. So I can say on behalf of all of us, all the people you work with, thank you for the time, energy, and effort that you two put into this to make sure it gets out there because we know that people are reading it all across the world.
Well, no, thank you. I love it. You know, speaking of Dr. Allen and going to his house, you bring that up. Folks have got to get this month's monthly update coming up because there's a picture in it that I had never seen. Anna, you shared this picture with me, and it's a picture of Dr. Allen standing on his front steps, and he's holding a copy of the book. And so it's a very cool picture that I'd love for people to see.
And if folks want to get that monthly update, they can log on, aproundtable.org. Let us know. Do you want it sent to you in the mail? Do you want it emailed? Do you want it both ways? We're happy to do that, aproundtable.org, or you can call us 1-800-522-8683, 1-800-522-8683. We will make sure that you receive the monthly update.
Written by Dave. Dave writes this every month. It's 4 Minutes for America. It's titled, and it takes about 4 or 5 minutes to read. And it takes me longer. I read slow, but but if you read well, you can read this in 4 minutes. And
one of the things I do is I lay this update out every month. I do it in the print edition and online in the app and in the email list. So if you aren't signed up for our email updates, please, we would love to reach out to you that way as well at thepublicsquare.com. But obviously, I was really biased towards this particular month's update.
You laid this out extra nice. I mean, it looks
worked
great.
really
They
hard
all
on
look
this
good.
one
Yeah.
because
This one looks really nice.
We've got fun pictures of the front steps and in there, and it's focused a lot about Dr. Allen and America. It's really Dave did a really great job.
One of the things that is mentioned in this month's edition of the monthly update is the Florida Department of Education, the Commissioner's Book of the Month. Every month, they release a book of the month for pre-K, K through second grade, third through fifth grade, sixth through eighth grade, and ninth through 12th grade. This month, kindergarten through second grade, the Commissioner's Book of the Month from the Florida Department of Education is The Front Steps, a true story about a boy who loved to read by Alan C. Duncan and Anna Welch. So congrats to both of you on that. When that email came through, from the Florida Department of Education. I mean, it's very, very cool.
Yeah, I was so excited. I for some reason, I missed the initial email. It was one of those.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
See, I'm staring out the window. I'm not paying attention.
Stop daydreaming, Alan.
So I came back to it. I was like, oh my gosh. What?
Look at this.
Yeah, it was very cool.
You didn't even get to give a speech.
Yeah. No, well, Florida, a lot of people don't know because we work in Ohio. Our headquarters are in Ohio. We obviously work in Florida, but our headquarters are in Ohio, and Florida is my birth state. So I felt a full circle moment right there. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, we have an office in Florida. We're heard all over the state of Florida. Excited.
Yeah, and Dr. Allen has been so supportive of this work. He's sent so many books to friends and family, and
he's got a lot of cool friends.
I know some of those might be in Florida, and we're so appreciative of him allowing us to share this story. And he was a part of all of it throughout the process, and I would say he's a big supporter of it as well.
Yeah, you'll hear some of that when we talk with Wayne coming up in the next couple of segments. But Anna, you really did a lot of communicating back and forth with Dr. Allen to get details about his childhood and his upbringing and try to put those into the story, which I thought was pretty fun.
Yeah, and those are unique to him. So we really just wanted to show him we were listening, and even just like the titles of books and what's on the chalkboard and when he becomes a professor, little things like that, that you might as a listener enjoy as well. But there's just little treasure pieces throughout we tried to sneak in there.
Well, in a moment, you're going to get to hear Wayne Shepherd interview Alan C. Duncan and Anna Welch on First Person with Wayne Shepherd. But I'm going to ask a question that you guys didn't get to because I know there's a limited amount of time with Wayne. Was there a direct children's book that maybe inspired you? Was there that one you were thinking of as you were writing this, think, boy, I like the direction of how that book went? Was there, or an author that you thought maybe had that push and that nudge? That's always my thought. Like, who is someone they were thinking about when they read a book? Anytime I read a book, not just the front steps.
So in terms of illustration, we looked at The Library Lion by Michelle Knudsen and Renato and the Lion by Barbara Di Lorenzo. Those were two we looked at in terms of it. We wanted the illustrations to have a watercolor sort of feel and vibe to them. So those were two that I read to my girls, and we love those ones, and we love the illustrations. And they're real classic looking type of illustrations. So in terms of illustrations, those were my two go-to books.
Anytime I do writing for children, this is not in the vein of this author at all, but Shel Silverstein is one of my favorite authors for children. He wrote The Giving Tree, and I think some people love The Giving Tree, some people hate The Giving Tree. If you think about the tree as a parent, you're probably not going to like it. If you think about the tree as God, you're going to like it, I promise, if you like God. That's my opinion. I think of that because he was he was just like a man's man kind of a guy, but he wrote these books for kids, and it was just kind of he also wrote A Boy Named Sue for Johnny Cash. So he was just this multi-talented person. So I kind of try to think about him anytime I write for kids. And Mr. Rogers as well. His work was obviously more in television, but just his spirit towards kids I really appreciate.
I've got one more to add too. The Questionnaires series, it's like Ada Twist Scientist, Iggy Peck Architect, those particular children's picture books, I look to as well for reference just because they tell the story of one child and like what they did with their imaginations. So that was another one that inspired me as we were trying to think about the book.
The Giving Tree. The Walgates have that in our house, and I bought it when I was with Alan Duncan at a bookstore on one of our trips.
That's right. I remember that.
Well, a local trip.
Have you read it yet?
Oh, yeah. No, we read it. We read it then. That was probably 10, 12 years. I mean, it was a while ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
So, but
That's
yes.
right, I remember that. Yeah, if I pulled out The Giving Tree right now, by about page 15, I'd be crying hard.
Well, after the break, you are going to get to hear the full interview with Wayne Shepherd, Alan C. Duncan, and Anna Welch right here on the Public Square.
Let's see, there's our tithe, food and clothing budget, taxes, all the insurance, and the car payments. Where's the line in your budget that helps pay the bill for fixing what's wrong in America? Log on today at aproundtable.org and join the growing team that's giving every month to get America back on track. Make your monthly contribution to aproundtable.org. Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the public square.
Welcome back to the Public Square. Let's join First Person with Wayne Shepherd as Wayne interviews Alan C. Duncan and Anna Welch.
Two guests who happen to be friends join us for this edition of First Person. I'm Wayne Shepherd, and you'll meet Alan C. Duncan and Anna Welch, friends and colleagues of mine who have penned a book for children, a true story which I think you'll enjoy. We'll get to the conversation shortly, but first, let me thank you for your listening support of First Person. We bring you stories each week that illustrate how God uses people who are committed to His will and ways to impact the world. Each of our interviews are archived online for convenient listening at firstpersoninterview.com. But you can also subscribe to our podcast with all the popular apps and never miss a program. As I host various radio programs and podcasts, one of my assignments is with the Public Square, part of the American Policy Roundtable. A new children's book has just been published by APR. It's the true story of the American scholar Dr. William B. Allen. Let's meet Alan C. Duncan and Anna Welch, who have co-authored this illustrated children's book. Here's Alan to begin.
Dr. William B. Allen, I like to say he's the foremost or the premier scholar of the American founding that we currently have living. For my money, that's who he is. He's a political philosopher. He's an educator. And he's an author as well of many academic works. Like if you go to George Washington's house, if you go to Mount Vernon, there's a gift shop there, and Dr. Allen's works are sold in that gift shop. So,
is that right?
George Washington, A Collection, is the book that you can find there. He's written a commentary on the Federalist Papers. He's written on Uncle Tom's Cabin and Harriet Beecher Stowe. He's also a ordained minister as well, and which is interesting. I talked to him about that. It's something that he said he kind of had been running from that calling a bit throughout his life.
Is that right?
And it was later on in his life that he actually became an ordained minister that preaches in the pulpit from time to time. But he's just a great friend of us at the American Mission Center and the Public Square.
Well, I'm hoping maybe we can have a chance to talk with him here and have him tell his own story to us on First Person at some point. We'll work on that. But in the meantime, we've got this wonderful children's book telling his story. Anna, you are one who put the story together along with Alan. So let's talk more about Dr. Allen and what is so inspiring about this man.
Sure. So The Front Steps is a children's book, and it's about a true story about a boy who loved to read. That boy would later grow up to be Dr. William B. Allen, our good friend. And it really examines his life in a moment in history during the time of segregation and when he was a child, and it tells a story in time that truly happened to him. And then the book goes then farther and shares how he grew up and what he ended up doing with his life to overcome some of the things he experienced as a child.
And where did this happen? Where did he grow up?
He grew up in Fernandina Beach, Florida, and he was one of 12 children. His father was a Baptist preacher and a fisherman. So his dad would go out on long fishing voyages. He would be home with his mother and his siblings. One of the things we wanted to include in the work was including his family unit into especially the illustrations of the project. So you'll see William as a young boy in this children's book, but you also see some of his family members, which was a really important part of his life.
Yeah, I was just looking at our bookshelf in here. We have so many books about Fernandina Beach, Florida, on the shelves here because we wanted to make sure that the illustrations, at least, weren't perfectly accurate, but reflected that place and that time period.
So place this in a time frame for us. Not to give away his age, but when would this have happened?
So this was happening in the 1950s. In the South during segregation. William goes out one day on a walk to the library. I have a couple comments from Dr. Allen as we were researching and getting to know his childhood. We asked lots of questions to him about, what did your house look like? And what did you do as a little boy? And how many siblings did you have? And it was really a neat experience to get to know someone that way in their, from their childhood. Really, really sweet moments.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you, did anything surprise you as you talked to him about his early life?
Yes, here are his words exactly. It's also worth reflecting why I was able to wander on my own to approach the library. Its location was not only opposite my kindergarten, but on the route to worship every Sunday. We youngsters usually went to church in a gaggle, but once I was introduced to kindergarten, I was released to go there on my own, somewhere between 5.5 and 6.5 years old. What a different era it was.
Yeah,
so to me, that was one thing that surprised me.
Sure.
You have to go back in time and put yourself in that character, from real person, real history. What was it like back then? And
Sure.
Kids in small towns and areas they were familiar with often would walk to church or walk to school, or in this case, this book sets him up as walking to the library. Can I share some more things about Dr. Allen's family,
Please.
Wayne?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to get a context for the young William in this book, he's 7 years old, and he had a pet boxer that often invaded the chicken coop. So the dog didn't last for too long before he found a new home. But
yeah, because again, a different time, you're using all those eggs. Like you need those
a family
chickens.
a family that big, right?
Yeah, you're not like running to Costco or something. Those eggs are primo.
And this is something that has shaped Dr. Allen. So we're so thrilled to be able to share this book with your listening audience. But just to share about Dr. Allen, you're so shaped by how you grow up, where you grow up, and the family and the friends you're involved with. And Dr. Allen, as we were researching just him as a young child, he wrote about his mother saying that she was a saint, the angel who shepherded me throughout my life after her far too early passing at age 47. In my boyhood, she was the glue, the very definition of a homemaker. At the same time, she was a practicing midwife and a general support for people in need of our community. She was very active. She encouraged my every ambition. And her one apologism I have frequently shared was how insistently she reminded me, hold your head up, boy. She did that only because physically I had a great tendency to incline my head, but also as a reminder to approach the world with confidence.
Oh, wow.
And you're going to see that in this book. You're going to see a young boy who grows up to approach the world with confidence.
Yeah. Well, this is a story of a man that we all admire very much. And by the way, we are all associates of the American Policy Roundtable. We work together on radio programs, and the two of you have worked under that banner and under the banner of Kids on the Square as subsidiary of the Public Square radio show that we do. And we'll talk more about that perhaps. But Alan, you've spent some time with Dr. Allen, recording him and listening to him and reading his material as well. I mean, this is a man who's, he's above my pay grade sometimes in what he writes about.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that. He is one of 4 human beings to ever translate Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws, that classic
I was hoping
work,
you'd mention that,
into English. And one of the other people that did it was King George. So he's also working on some more stuff about him as well. That is hopefully to come in the future. But Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws, if people aren't familiar, was other than the Bible, that was the work that the founders of America quoted more than anything else. And I learned that from Dr. W.B. Allen. So it's very important work for our founding, and there just weren't that many editions in English. And so Dr. W.B. Allen worked for about 50 years, on and off, worked on other things as well in that time, but in translating it from French into English for us. And so I have that on my shelf by my bedside, but I think it's probably going to take me 50 years to read it. So it took him 50 years to write it. It might take me 50 to read it. So,
well, that's just a little bit about this man. But what is he like personally, Anna? I mean, given all these credentials, he He sounds like he could be kind of stuffy.
Not at all. Although I do check all my spelling before I email him to make sure I don't have any typos. So I still do that. But no, he is so warm-hearted. He really is.
He's quick to laugh, which is something that you might not expect from someone who's so smart and so well-studied. But he has a great laugh, a great smile, and he's not shy to display that.
And we'll continue talking with Alan and Anna about this new children's book, The Front Steps, coming up here on First Person.
We will be right back for more on The Public Square.
Introducing the latest program from the Public Square.
Kids on the Square.
We at Kids on the Square are dedicated to helping teach the next generation through topics like Bible stories, scientific marvels, and American history. We want to equip parents with fun and free educational resources to share the truth with their children. Won't you join us? New episodes are released monthly. You can listen wherever podcasts are available and visit kidsonthesquare.com to find out more. Thank you, and
welcome to Kids on the Square.
Welcome back to the Public Square. Let's go back to the interview with Alan C. Duncan and Anna Welch from First Person with Wayne Shepherd.
He was a young boy. This is a true story. He was a young boy who wanted to go to the local library and wanted to read. He was one of 12 children. Is it really true he was banned from the library because of the color of his skin?
Well, that is true, sadly. I first heard Dr. Allen tell that story when my dad and I went to visit him at his house in Havre de Grace, Maryland. Dr. Allen was in the process of giving the American Policy Roundtable probably half of his personal library. The other half is at an academic institution. And so he gave us his library. So my dad and I went as kind of representatives to it was kind of a father-son road trip. We went down there. It's a beautiful community that Dr. Allen lives in. And we were just kind of there as the folks were packing up his books, just as a thank you and representatives of our organization. And so Dr. Allen was very gracious with his time and sat and chatted with us. And he told that story to my dad and I about the fact that he loved to read. He described himself as a bookish child. He just loved to read. He read everything. He needed some more stuff. And so he walked to the library and they wouldn't let him in. And just, and some of this stuff, we don't want to kind of spoil the whole book. There are a couple little, I wouldn't say twists, but there's some poignant little moments. I don't want to spoil it. But the way he told the story, and with no bitterness at all. Obviously, he wasn't saying what happened to him was correct. He didn't have a bitterness about him. My dad and I were driving back, and we just got to talking, and we said, this sounds like a children's book. It was so poignant, the way he described this encounter, that we said, that sounds like a book. Ended up writing a draft, and then our whole team around the table at the American Policy Roundtable, everybody pretty much contributed a draft or an idea. And it really was this really fun team effort of trying to bring this story to life.
Did he welcome the idea?
He did, which was amazing. Well, I've got to tell you an embarrassing account on my part about that. So I was tasked to reach out to him initially and ask him if it'd be okay to tell this story. Okay. And so I asked him. I said, "Hey, you remember you told my dad and me this story, and would it be okay if we worked on a children's book project about this?" And we also asked him, "Has this ever been told anywhere else already?" And he wrote back and said, "Yes, it was told in my book, The State of Black America, on page," and he gave me the page numbers. And I felt like an inch big because we've already interviewed him about that book on the Public Square. What better way to say I have not read the entire book than to have him point out to me the page numbers that this account was told already in his book. But so The State of Black America is a very great scholarly work that features the work of a lot of different people. But our book is a children's picture book that seeks to distill that story down and highlight it by itself.
Let's talk about those pictures, those illustrations. They're beautiful, Anna.
Yes, we had a wonderful illustrator, Amy Selstad, work on this project with us, and she did such a lovely job in a watercolor fashion to bring William to life and all of the characters involved and the setting. And it was really a very enjoyable fun part of the process would be like me and Alan would sit down and have meetings with Amy and have a million ideas, and then to see those ideas get finely tuned and then put, paint on paper to say, and to see it come to life was just really neat for the both of us.
So professionally done. Great job.
Yeah, Amy was a true professional. We had her kind of on a tight time frame as well because we were trying to get this book in the hands of folks for the Christmas season that year. And so she knew our deadlines and she worked very hard to make sure that she could get that accomplished. And she was also going to art school at the same time. So she did a heroic job to get that in people's hands.
Tell me about the process of saying this needs to be taught to children, this story. Why make this a children's book?
Well, I think it has a great message of overcoming injustice that can be applicable to, all stages of life. And so I think we tried to tell his story, not over the top, or just try to tell his story in the best way we could. But also, there's many lessons, but I think one of the big lessons you draw from is, how do you overcome injustice in the world, and how do you overcome evil by doing good? Which I think we can all agree Dr. Allen is a really wonderful example of Romans 12:21. Overcoming evil with good.
You both are parents. Alan, your boys are a little older than Anna's children. This book has impacted your boys?
Yeah, I think it has. Caleb is known to cry at books and things. So I think he shed some tears when I read this. I can't remember fully because he kind of cries at every book, which is one of his great traits. He's a very tender-hearted person. But he was kind enough to take it into his reading teacher. His reading teacher is one of his favorite teachers, and I think the feeling's mutual. So he took it into her, and she actually wrote us a very sweet note. And that was special for us to get because Caleb struggles with reading. I don't know. It was special for my family.
And Anna, your children are younger, but do you see any impact for them? I know they have seen you work on this process of developing this book over time, and now they see it. What are their reactions?
They were very happy when the book was finally here in our house that I got to show them, because I think they saw from kind of start to finish what it looks like to do a project like this. They, of course, love the story and the illustrations, and they did really love the book in general. But I think they overall just saw what it looks like to take just a concept, an idea, a conversation in a car on the way back from Maryland to Ohio, and to see that conversation go from talking to others about it, then to writing drafts as a team, then to collaborating all those ideas and editing it down to one draft and finding an editor. And they didn't see all of those little steps, but they saw some of them. And I think that they looked at that book and they were like, wow, Mommy, we're really proud of you. I think that was their biggest takeaway.
And as they grow a little older, they're going to catch the message as well, pointing out the injustice and the fact that this little boy overcame that injustice. So that's a great message for any kid of any age. Well, we hope this book will also be placed in libraries. As a matter of fact, you got some feedback from a librarian about the book, didn't you, Anna?
This is from Mary Hassler. She's the CEO of Harford County Public Library in Belcamp, Maryland. And she writes, beautifully illustrated and deeply heartwarming, this picture book introduces readers to William, a young boy who discovers the world through his love of reading. Set during a time when African Americans were prohibited from entering public libraries, William's sadness is met with a quiet act of kindness. A librarian brings him a book to read on the library steps. Inspired by his love of books and fueled by his dream of creating a library open to everyone, William grows up to become a champion of reading and public libraries for all. This lovely story touches the heart and soul, leaving readers filled with hope and inspiration.
We mentioned the book was created under the auspices of Kids on the Square. which is part of the American Policy Roundtable. What is Kids on the Square? Who wants to tackle that one?
Kids on the Square right now, it's mainly an audio podcast. It's kind of a radio variety show audio podcast that Sarah and Jonah Jackson on our team are producing. But I think from this initial podcast, there are hopes to maybe expand to some video things in the future. Maybe there's a nice website, kidsonthesquare.com, and obviously now we have kind of starting a print wing of it as well. So it's the Public Square and the American Policy Roundtable's outreach and mission to children.
Final question or two for you.
Yes.
The book has been out for a few months and it's getting great reviews like we've heard here. What does it mean to you personally to be a part of a project like this? Alan, can I start with you?
Well, I grew up with my mom in particular reading me, and my dad too, but my mom in particular reading me children's books. And there are still children's books I could pick up today, and just the images and the words that are in those books will snap me back to that place as a child. So this is a genre of literature that I have loved since I have memories. Even today, I find myself, I'm in a bookstore, which is one of my favorite hobbies is going to bookstores. I find myself wandering over to the children's book section and looking at it. I think the art in them, when it's done right, is very beautiful. I think there's a poetry to the words to a really well-written children's book. And so I've always wanted to write one. And so for the first one that I've ever written and that's been put out into the world, for it to be one that also honors a man that I consider a great man and a friend and a mentor, I couldn't ask for a higher honor for my first children's book.
Anna?
Two things come to mind, going along with what Alan's saying about just the immense responsibility of sharing someone else's story. What an honor to be entrusted with that. We never took that lightly, and our desire really was just to beautifully tell Dr. Allen's story for the next generation. And I know we all have a heart for the next generation here, reaching out to children and growing them up in the ways of good, solid truth. And we see sharing stories like this as part of that.
That's the thing about a good children's book, which I hope and pray that this is that when you go to a library or a bookstore and you go to the children's section, some of these books are 50 years old, if not older. A good children's book, to your point, will live on. And that was something that I think we tried to do, is make this have a timeless feel. Sometimes the books that are being fed to children nowadays have some sort of a political bent or a slant to them, whether from the left or the right. It's kind of very of the political moment. And I just don't necessarily think that those kinds of pieces of art last, if they're even considered art at all, probably more propaganda. This obviously has a point to it, but it's not a piece of political propaganda. It's hopefully a piece of art that can last.
And what a neat way for him to live on, and his legacy to live on in a children's book.
And one last thing, Anna, proceeds from the book go to Kids on the Square, right?
All the proceeds are going directly to benefit the American Policy Roundtable and outreaches like Kids on the Square. We don't profit from it personally.
Again, you've been listening to the authors of the children's book, The Front Steps, Anna Welch and Alan C. Duncan, as they tell the story of Dr. William B. Allen, now a noted American scholar who just wanted to read as a boy. It's a wonderful true story. We'll have links to this illustrated children's book at firstpersoninterview.com.
Well, that was Wayne Shepherd interviewing Alan C. Duncan, Anna Welch on The Front Steps. Great interview, guys. Good job. Thanks to Wayne for sharing that with our audience at the Public Square. And if you don't listen to First Person with Wayne Shepherd, I encourage you to listen to that program each and every week because he has some fascinating guests on there.
He does. He does a great job of doing it. And if you would have heard the original files, we messed up a lot more. Wayne and Joe Carlson really helped us and edited us and made us sound
so good.
Coherent, at least. So.
Alan, I hope you can do the same for us now, too.
I'll try. I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
Yeah, Alan, the pressure's on you for this one. No, you guys did a great job. And you've also had some other opportunities that we highlight in the March monthly update from the American Policy Roundtable. You had the opportunity to speak to a school recently. Tell us about that.
So I dropped off a couple books to the librarian at this particular school, and it was perfect timing because she said they had somebody coming in to talk to the kids that wasn't able to make it in a few weeks from then. And she was asking, would you and Alan like to come and speak to K through 6th about the front steps and what it might look like to make a book and share with us as authors? And I was immediately saying, yes, we would love to. Please send us the details. And I think I texted you, Alan, afterwards.
Yeah.
And you were interested in it as well.
Yeah, I immediately wanted to do it. But then after saying, yes, let's do it, I got nervous. I'm someone who talks on the radio like every day somewhere. I talk on the radio, and I was nervous to speak to a K through 6th grade school live and in person. That's a little daunting because the way you talk to a K might be different than how you talk to a 6th. And so I don't know, that freaked me out a little bit.
Were you worried about them daydreaming maybe a little bit?
Yeah.
Yes. But kids are the toughest audience. They're going to be honest. You're not going to be like, oh, I wonder how they felt. Well, you're going to be able to tell. 100%. You look great at them.
Yes. So we did say yes. We mustered up the courage, and they had us in at the end of February. And it was so neat. They had the whole chapel packed. I mean, the kindergartners were sitting on the floor up front, and the parents were sitting in the balcony. And there were several hundred students there that day, just looking up at me and Alan and their beautiful faces, and then you realize, oh wow, we've got to now talk to K through 6th here.
Well, the book is K through 2. We talked about the commissioners thing. It's a K through 2 book, so it's not. You wouldn't write this book specifically for an audience of a 5th grader or a 6th grader. So you kind of just hoped that they would understand that. It's a children's picture book. You would hope that the 6th graders in the room could just understand that. And they did. These kids were great kids. I didn't pick up any weird, bad vibes at all. Every kid seemed like they were very much engaged. And we wanted to do a question and answer time rather than just pontificate after reading the book to them. We wanted to know, what do you guys think? We thought that'd be the best way to communicate with people. Read the book. Do you have any questions? And we'll go from there.
And that was a really interesting part, just to hear all the different questions they had. And they were thoughtful. And Alan, do you remember some of the questions?
Well, there was one young black girl that it was very cute. I think she was in kindergarten, maybe.
She was.
Yeah, so yes. She was very young, but she was asking. She heard about the library that we're in right now that Dr. Allen helped to build and donated books to, and she said maybe that library that he made can merge with the library from back then that he couldn't go in. Like, she was asking some question about them coming together, and I just thought it was very, very beautiful. And I think in a way it kind of has.
Yes, those kids were so thoughtful in their questions, and they were really intrigued by the fact that Dr. Allen did come to build his own library, and the American Mission Center is where some of that library is housed. And they asked lots of different questions too.
They asked if he was married.
If he was married, if he has children.
And we got to say he did marry a librarian.
We've been waiting for that moment. It was finally our moment.
Because they asked. And you could see her picture in the back of the book as well.
We couldn't sneak that in the book somehow, but we finally had the moment we got to share that joyful reality. But they were just so intrigued on, why were some of these laws made, or when did they end, the laws from segregation era? What does Dr. Allen do now? They were just full. We could have sat there for 20 more minutes and listened to more questions.
Oh yeah, we didn't even get to all the hands that were in the air, which I felt bummed about.
Me too. I can't imagine being a teacher every day having to deal with that reality.
There's a lot of hands in there. There's a lot of hands in there. You just don't get to call on
everybody. And after we had question and answers, we talked about, and this might have been more relevant perhaps to some of the older kids in the audience, of how do you make a book? What does it look like to write and practice your art, or practice, illustrating, and how do you bring all those different ideas into a reality? And that was really neat too, because I think some of the older kids were interested in that. They work on newspaper clubs, so some of that stuff is really relevant to what they're even doing now at school.
Well, and one of the things we were able to tell them was right now, just like read as much as you can and keep working on whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's, science experiments, whether it's writing, whether it's, some sort of art project or drawing. Just keep doing it. Because like Anna and I said, we have ideas for other books that we've been kicking around in our head before we got the chance or the opportunity to write this one. So you never know when your opportunity is going to come. You just have to be ready for it.
And I never thought I would actually be an quote unquote author. That was,
You're not a quote unquote author. You don't have to know quotes.
I'm still even having a hard time accepting that here.
No quotes.
That's how we're going to start introducing you. Author,
quote unquote.
Author
yes.
Anna Welch.
I like it.
Author Anna Welch.
So you just never know. Like you dream those dreams, and you're exactly right. Be ready, because someday that opportunity might be knocking on the door.
Well, and you think about it, when you guys wrote this as well, and I know you talked about this a bit in the interview with Wayne, when you're writing it about a man that is for lack of a better term, big time author. I mean, so you're sending him drafts and allowing him to take a look at stuff.
That was a little nerve wracking.
You better believe we were checking all the typos.
And he is so nice, and he is just the best of the best. We can't say enough kind words about Dr. Allen and his willingness to serve with us at the American Policy Roundtable and all the things that he has done. And I'm excited for people. We talked about the monthly update. We talked about the picture in there, but you want to get that monthly update. You want to log on to aproundtable.org. You want to call us at 1-800-522-8683. We can mail it to you. We can email it to you. And you're going to want to see that picture of Dr. Allen holding a copy of the front steps. And when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about what it looks like as we talk about the next generation and moving forward, and what the next generation, their thoughts and their ideas.
We will be right back for more on the Public Square. Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
Welcome back to the Public Square. Today, with Alan C. Duncan and Anna Welch, talking about the front steps. And we just highlighted the opportunity you guys had to share at a school, speaking to an assembly of kindergarten through sixth graders. And there was one question that came from a fourth grade girl after you guys read the book to the students, and they had an opportunity to interact with you. But there was one question that kind of stuck out, and we highlight in this month's edition of the monthly update. That question was,
why did the people in the 50s forget the words of the Declaration of Independence?
Yeah, I was like, wow.
What
such
a
an insightful,
thought-provoking, profound question.
Yeah. That's one of those where you kind of feel like, at least I did, unprepared. How do you answer this to a room full of 200 children?
And to give you credit, Alan, I think you answered it really succinctly for the children in the room. Is sin. And that's true. I mean, that's what sin does. It turns into hatred, and we forget as people. We're very forgetful people. Mm-hmm. And you see that all throughout the Old Testament and current, throughout history, you see that we're very forgetful people.
From the monthly update, in response to the question that you guys received, why did the people forget the words of the Declaration of Independence? Dave Zanotti writes, and that question came from a fourth grader after reading the front steps. It is the real question that has always faced this nation. It was the question John Quincy Adams asked a packed crowd in the year 1837 in Newburyport, Massachusetts. It was the same question he asked every session of Congress for the 18 years he served on Capitol Hill. It was the same question he asked the Supreme Court of the United States in his defense of the Mende people from Africa who were illegally captured aboard the slave ship La Amistad. The question haunted Abraham Lincoln. Woodrow Wilson did everything he could to forget the words of the Declaration. John F. Kennedy did his best to stand upon them. Ronald Reagan brought those words back to life for an entire generation. And then Dave asked the question, but who will bring those words to the next generation? And he talks about the work that we do here at the American Policy Roundtable with the public square, with Kids on the Square, because that's our duty, that's our calling. That's the charge we've been given to move that forward. And by work such as the front steps, that's exactly what we're going to do. We can't forget the words of the Declaration. We can't forget the biblical principles in which they were laid upon.
Well, and Dave is working. Dave mentioned John Quincy Adams. Dave and Anna as well is laying this book out. Dave's working on a book about John Quincy Adams as we speak. Now, it's not a children's book, but it's a book that talks about these first principles. These all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and so we're looking forward to the publication of that book.
Yeah, and I think to also going back to this young girl's question, we talked some more about the founders wrote those words, and that was the promise and the ideal. But in a sinful world, we don't live up to the reality of that promise sometime. And we've been striving towards equality from the very founding of the country. We also talked about how Dr. Allen could have chosen bitterness in what he suffered as a young child, the injustice he saw just because of the color of his skin. And we talked about how he overcame evil with good, that Romans 12 principle. He didn't become better. He actually learned to love American history and dedicated his life to learning about the founders and George Washington and all these principles upon which the country was founded. I love what Dave writes in the update where he says, this truth still works. Kids still get it when they get a chance to hear it. I just found that so encouraging we can talk about the Declaration of Independence with these kids. We can talk about the Constitution. The country had many failings, but that is what we're striving towards, even towards this day. So we don't forget our history. It's such an important lesson.
Yeah, and we have other authors in this building as well. We know the books that Dave has written through the years. Obviously, Dr. Allen, Sherry Eisen. She has a children's book out as well. Yes,
Sherry Eisen has a book called The Upside Down Forest. I'm holding it in my hands right now. We have physical hard copies in the office. If people do want to order them, that's possible. But we're in the middle of producing an audiobook version of The Upside Down Forest. And this is sort of an allegorical children's fable about the gospel message, really, told through the lives of animals and a woodsman of the forest. So yeah, we wanted to bring this. We're a radio broadcast. I mean, we're talking right now on mics, so we wanted to bring a version of this to an audio form. And we thought Kids on the Square would be a great place to do that. So Jonah and Sarah have the files right now, and hopefully they're going to be in the future adding some music, maybe some sound effects, and really bringing Sherry's read of this book to life. So that's down the road, but be on the lookout for that in the future.
So the Front Steps was kind of debuted at Christmas time in 2024. It was talked about at Christmas in America, the production that the American Policy Roundtable does. And there was when I say local, there was a Northeast Ohio school principal at Christmas in America this year. And after the program and after the first of the year, he said, can you bring me a box of the Front Steps? I want to put one in every classroom, K through 6. I said, yes, no problem. You got it. So I took him a box of books, dropped them off. He opened them up and he looked at me, and it was a box of The Upside Down Forest. And I was like, I said, I guess I grabbed the wrong box, but that's a great book as well. So put that in every classroom, K through 6. Let me bring you back tomorrow, The Front Steps.
They got a 2-for-1 special
there. They did. But he felt, and that was encouraging that he as a principal felt that book was important to be in every single elementary classroom, because that's what he wants the teachers reading to the kids, because they need to have an understanding of history. But just as you said, Anna, an understanding of history, but they need to know who that young boy on those library steps in Florida grew up to become. They need to connect the dots. And as they go through school, they'll be able to connect the dots and say, wow, That's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. You talk about these books, the Upside Down Forest and the Front Steps going into school libraries. It's encouraging to me. We actually got to tour the library of the school that we were speaking at, and that was one of the most fun parts of the trip for me, just to see what books they had in there, and they had some of my favorite kids' books in that library, which was cool. But we live in such a fast-paced culture. Everything you scroll, it's digital. We don't own physical media a lot of times anymore. And so that's the nice thing about a book, is that it is tangible and it'll last. If these books are taken care of, hopefully they'll be in those libraries in 50 years. Whereas we live in a world where you see a video and it's gone into cyberspace and you may never see it again. So there's something nice about having a physical, tangible copy of something that's gonna last.
One of the things we say around here is we are striving to restore the love of reading and books. And I'm thinking about the interview we did with David McCullough and the Wright brothers. And he shared that their home was a home full of books.
Yes.
And that's one of my favorite little clips on the Public Squares YouTube site, is just hearing David McCullough say that about the Wright brothers' home, is they just had books everywhere. Just they loved reading and opening up books and learning about anything and everything.
Well, and I think as parents too, I think of all the things where maybe we look at our children and we think of, how many times we said, oh, they do this too much, or, oh, they do that too much. No, I don't know if parents ever said, my kid reads too much. My kid reads too much. Isn't that what we want to see our children doing? We want to see them diving in, reading, because that engages the mind, but it also allows them to ask questions. It creates that curiosity. And that's exciting to see. And that's why it was exciting to see the minds engaged, the young minds engaged with each of you as you did your presentation at the local school talking about the Front Steps. So thanks to Alan, thanks to Anna for being with us today on the Public Square.
Now we got to talk about your book, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.